Good morning. Today I would like to explore the idea of the gaze, of our look. Where are we looking? When I first started learning surfing, I remember, I asked, how do I turn right? How do I turn left? And the instructor simply said, you just look right or you look left. And this actually was the same thing in many other sports. For example, skydiving was the same thing. How do I turn right? How do I turn left? You just look right or you look left. So, in many sports to turn or to go anywhere, we simply just have to direct our gaze. We have to look in the direction where we want to go. The look is very important in a lot of physical practices. For example, in yoga, there's a big emphasis. Where we look is a big part of the practice as well. Because where we look really dictates how we hold our bodies, how we direct our attention. And not only this, very often actually, our look really, as a consequence, almost as a very natural consequence, chain of effects, we have what follows is the mind makes a story. We see something, we comment something, we like it, we don't like it, we want it, we don't want it. So learning to direct our looks in life, in sports, in general, is a very important thing. Because even, for example, I was learning skate surfing, and if you want to turn correctly, you have to look all the way back to be able to actually have your body posture be in the correct position to be able to turn correctly. And so this is with our physical bodies, in our physical environment. We have to really be able to have this awareness of our bodies, to understand that our look really dictates how our body holds itself in space and where we are going to go. But this also applies actually in our mind, because a lot of the things we have in our life today, a lot of the situations we are in today, if you reflect on it, a lot of the things actually that happen in our lives always started with the look. We always see something first. We see something, maybe we want it. We might pursue something. For example, if you pursue any kind of physical career such as dancing or a career in a movement or any of those things, it might have started because we saw someone do it. We saw something, we saw a very beautiful body movement, and we decided to base all of our life on a simple performance that we saw, right? So learning to direct our gaze and learning to control consciously, almost at will, our gaze is a very important part of our growth in life. At the same time, in our physical bodies, but also in our spiritual life, in our mental life, right? Because if we cannot control where we look, sometimes the consequence is much harder to control. Controlling where we look takes a lot of time. I have to move my head, I have to move my body. I can decide with more time to look or to not look somewhere. But once we have a thought in our minds, it's sometimes much harder to not pursue a thought, because we're often not even aware of our thoughts. So learning to direct our gaze is a really important step before we're able to control our thoughts and have this kind of volition over our thoughts. I personally, for example, used to run a lot on a treadmill, just because I was living in a very hot country in Egypt and the weather was very hot. So during the whole run, sometimes 30 minutes, sometimes 1 hour, one time per week, all of my runs actually on the treadmill, I would focus the whole run. I would fix a point in front of me, usually it was a tree, and I would fix the tree the whole run. I would hear all sorts of noises. I would smell all sorts of things. I would hear all sorts of conversations. A lot of things are compelling me to look around me, to look who came into the gym, who's coming out, to see all of those things. Do I know this person? Do I know that person? What's this? What's the smell? What's this person? And to look around me to see all sorts of things. But then having this resolve to not look anywhere except for the point that I fixed was a very symbolic exercise of something that we often do in meditation, and that is very difficult to do, which is just fixing an object of awareness, which is the breath, whatever it is that we choose, and keeping our attention on it. So the gaze in this sense acts as a tangible thing that we can start with, because our thoughts are much more untangible. We cannot control our thoughts or control our gaze. We cannot control our attention in the same way we can control our gaze, right? In the beginning, it's much easier to control our gaze because it's a physical movement, right? And then from the gaze, a lot of things happen. Because a lot of the things, for example, if I want to, for example, it happens a lot of times. I see something in the street, I'm driving, I see something in the street, it reminds me of something, I would like to eat that, and on the way home, for example, I go out of my way to eat something or to do something. So a lot of the things we see in life, whether that's consciously or unconsciously, really direct how our life turns out, how we do a lot of things in life. And I do this exercise often to just try to retrace a lot of the things I have done in life, how they all started at some moment with seeing something, right? And then we sometimes know that certain habits, for example, seeing certain things might lead us to do things that we don't like to do. For example, eating a certain food, for example. So maybe a good exercise in the beginning would be to always retrace the actions that we don't like to a certain look, to a certain gaze. Where did we direct our look in a place that we shouldn't have? And try to work our way backwards from there. And then try to prevent ourselves in the future from looking there at all or from seeing those things. And then it becomes like an exercise of almost curating. Everything that we don't want to see, we don't see. Whether those are qualities in people, whether those are physical things, objects, foods, people, situations, things that we notice in others, for example, parts of our body that we notice or don't notice, or we look for in others, for example. All of those things, if you want to change those thoughts that we have in our minds, sometimes it's much easier to start with where we look. What are we noticing in people? What are we noticing in life? And if we stop to notice those things, if we actually consciously prevent ourselves from seeing those things, a lot of our thoughts would stop appearing anyway. And this also becomes an exercise. It's sometimes much easier to start with something tangible, to understand the mechanics of it, so that when we move on to something later in meditation, such as having this attention, which is our eyes, seeing our thoughts and how our awareness is focused on certain thoughts or others, it becomes much easier because we have been practicing on something with the eyes. And then once we move to meditation, it becomes much easier to notice those patterns. When I think of this, I end up doing that, right? Because ultimately, all of our actions really started from a thought, whether that's conscious or unconscious. So when we learn to notice those mechanisms, then also in our meditation or in our life in general, we start noticing, okay, so when I think of this thing, I end up doing that thing. When I think of this thing, I end up feeling bad. When I think of that thing, I end up feeling good and I want to do certain things. And then willingly, we start choosing our thoughts. We start directing our attention to certain thoughts and not others. We refrain from thinking certain things. We refrain from criticizing in our minds certain things. We refrain from certain thought patterns, such as criticism or many of the other thought patterns that really sometimes are not that constructive in our lives, right? So learning to direct our thoughts is a really, really important thing, but it's a step harder than learning to direct our gaze, which also takes some practice. But we can start. The moment we learn to start controlling our gaze and where we look, and really to never see anything that we don't want to see, and only see the things that we would like to see almost at command, then it becomes easier to progress in this path later on, and doing the same thing with our thoughts and feelings and all of those things. And then it becomes a very beautiful reality, because it's not about also denying certain things, but it's also about always having our awareness be occupied by the things that we choose to occupy ourselves with, to see the things that we choose to see, right? It's a curated, but it's a consciously created reality almost, because we really have to focus. We cannot solve all of the problems in the world. We cannot think of all of the things in the world, right? We have to focus our attention and our gaze on where the things that we really can contribute to. And it's much better to be able to focus our attention and eventually thoughts and creative life on those things, to be constructive, to be helpful, to be creative in those fields.